So hello and welcome. This is my the next one of my 60 inspiring conversations. And I have got with me today the lovely, amazing, fantastic, wonderful, yeah, we are good friends, Lizzie Paish. And I am extremely blessed that I have regular conversations with Lizzie. We have some deep dives into all sorts of amazing things. And one of the things that we have got in common, I will let Lizzie tell you a little bit about herself in a minute. One of the things that we have got in common is the Bible, actually, and the stories of Jesus, the stories, and how they relate to looking deeply into our own minds and how life works. So Lizzie has done an amazing thing. She has written a fantastic book that it's all about Advent. So I wanted to talk to Lizzie particularly and for her to tell us a little bit about her book. So Lizzie, tell us about you, anything, and let's chat about this book.
Okay. Well, hi everybody, and let me just begin by kind of introducing myself a bit before we get on to the book, because the book sort of has come about through my coaching work and understanding of the teachings of Sydney Banks and all of that. And it's interesting because I would never ever have expected that I would write anything resembling a Christian book. I just thought that was extremely unlikely. I just kind of, yeah, that wasn't me. And so I think I was quite resistant to the idea of writing this book. And in fact, as you know, Deb, I was actually writing a different book. Well, I am writing another book. Yeah. So the book that I started writing was about the stories of Jesus, but not particularly to do with Christmas. And yeah, the reason it's weird for me to be writing a Christian book is because I just feel like I've always been a bit on the fringes of church. I've always kind of, there's really something in there that resonates, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm just like, I'm not sure I really believe that. And the whole kind of ram it down your throat, you've got to believe all this, which I experienced in my younger years, just really sort of turned me off, I think. And I just felt like that doesn't feel right. Or, and people going, well, you really need to believe this and this and this. And I was like, well, I don't. And for a while, I kind of tried to cram myself into this little box where I thought I believed it. But, you can't really believe what you don't believe. So it all kind of breaks apart at some point.
It does.
So I think I've been, but my husband's very committed to his Christian faith, but in a very, very open-minded way. But so that's kind of what's kept me hanging in there. And we've always been to church with the kids and this, that, and the other. But I've always been a bit like, oh, what am I doing here? And then when I started learning about the principles, I a lot of the things that Sid talked about, I just found coming into my head this thought of, oh, that's what Jesus meant when he said this, or oh, that's what that's about. Oh, that parable, that's the same as this, and so much sort of started making sense in a different way. And I think, now I just feel so grateful for having that kind of background of all those stories that have just been it's almost like they've been brewing in the background all these years. And then this other thing comes along, this new understanding, and they sort of gravitate to it and go, oh, this is this. And oh, these connections are being made. And now, as you know, I also enjoy listening to the teachings of Abraham Hicks. Yeah. And again, same thing. I keep doing things like, oh yeah, that's what Jesus meant, and oh, that's what that story is. And and sometimes even Abraham will make those connections. And for me, it's just, this sense I had inside of me of there's something in this, but it's not necessarily all those bits that I don't believe, but there's something in this. Those other understandings have helped me to kind of crystallize what is that something. And make sense of it. And I think I just as I was driving along today, actually, I was just kind of thinking gently about this conversation we were going to have, and something occurred to me that that I'd never really thought before, which was that somehow there's so much, religion is all about, here's a religion and it's a thing, and are you in it? Are you in with this? Do you believe all of that? And I never could be, because I didn't believe all of it. And what I realized now, and you can't believe what you don't believe, but you can kind of go along with it.
Yes.
what I realize is the place I'm at now is I believe what I believe, and I feel totally at home with that because it makes sense to me, and because it just it resonates, and it seems practically useful. It actually means something. It's not just like, so for example, phrases like Jesus died for your sins, that doesn't mean anything to me. I have no idea what that really means. Now, for some people, that probably resonates deeply with them and it really means something, but it doesn't to me. So there's no point me kind of sitting down and going, yes, how can I believe this? But then over here, this sense that there's something greater than me guiding my life, that really looks true to me. And whether what you want to call that, or that doesn't even matter. It's just there's something I really feel deeply, and so I don't have to make myself believe it. I just do believe it. I see it. I see it. It's like Sid used to say, I see. Seeing and seeing. No, exactly. It's like, I'm sure there's more to see, but I just like, oh yeah, this is what's drawing me. This is what's kind of means something to me.
I love that, and I love how like you say, these understandings, what Sydney Banks shares, what Abraham Hicks shares, what the Bible shares, they're all pointing to the same thing. And one of the things that I don't know, with other things it's quite easy to read something and think, oh yeah, that totally resonates. Oh yeah, not so much that, so I won't worry about that. But with growing up with religion, it's almost like, no, the whole Bible, you can't throw out a single thing. You can't.
It has to resonate. It has to all resonate. Yes, what do you mean it's not?
If it doesn't resonate, force it to resonate. And yet coming to a space of seeing all of these things that are pointing to the same thing, and it's like, if something resonates with you, brilliant, and if something doesn't resonate with you, brilliant, and just put it to one side for now, and it is interesting as our journey, I know my experiences as my journey has moved along, different things resonate at different times, and all of a sudden something, like you say, that has always been, I don't really know, all of a sudden it's like, oh, and then something lights up or wakes up. So there's all of that too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just I think I notice in myself that I'm becoming more, as I realize that more, I'm more accepting of the fact that other people resonate with something different, and that that's not wrong or shouldn't be. It's just different. It's just, if there's a chapter in my book called How Intelligent is Universal Intelligence, and it's basically saying, if universal intelligence is universally intelligent, I think it's clever enough to speak to each of us in the way we need to hear. And that might be the Bible, but it equally might not be.
I actually want, if you don't mind, I don't want to interrupt, but I think you have made such a beautiful and precious point there, that I think, how often do we as human beings, and I think it's really, really crucial in our evolution history to look at that point. It was like, this resonates and this doesn't, and it's okay if we resonate with different things, and we're all actually headed, we all actually want the same thing. Like, I don't think there's anyone who is arguing with someone, disagreeing, causing trouble, do anything. If you actually were to boil it down, we want to feel peace of mind, to be loved, to belong, to care for each other. And I do not believe with any atrocity in the world, I believe that is at the core of everything that we all do. And I think it is really, really crucial to sort of, and I can see this for me as well, that's been a bit of an evolution for me, to get to a place of seeing it's okay. We're all individuals, we're all, and our own personal aspect of God or the divine or whatever this is, and we do see things differently, and that's okay. And I think for many, many years, and through religion, sadly and unfortunately, there's been a lot of, no, it's not okay if you see this differently, for me, to me. And it's caused a lot of problems. So I think just you saying, I think it's not just a throwaway comment to want to gloss over, to sort of say, you've seen that actually it's perfectly okay. You can love someone and be with someone and interact with someone, and even if you have different views and different ideas. And I think as a human race, we've got to find a way to embody that, to move forward. I think that is so crucial.
Absolutely, absolutely. And isn't it interesting that even within the context of one, you know, lovely and well-meaning religion, Christianity, we can still be at each other of, you know, no, you're not doing it right and you're not believing it right. And you know, even gently, you know, not even meaning kind of talking about conflicts like Northern Ireland, but, you know, just groups at my school, Christian Union, where it's like, oh, no, we need to put you straight because you're not really seeing it right. It's like, just that is the beginnings of this. There's a right way and a wrong way.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's in a way one of the kind of themes that I try to bring out in my book is, you know, I've looked at these pieces of the Christmas story and written and expanded those stories and written reflections on what I see in them. But I'm also really, really encouraging my readers to look for themselves and go, and what do you see? What do you hear in that story? Because you'll probably hear something different. You know, I'm pointing you in the direction of what I see, but when you stop going, oh, this is just this story about shepherds that I know really well, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's lovely. And then they're going to sing a Christmas carol, you know, like we all hear that at Christmas. It's like, oh, maybe if I listen to that story in a different way, there's something new in it. So, you know, so if we take that one as an example, you know, for me, the story of the shepherds, I heard in that, well, lots of things, but one of the chapters is about the shepherds sort of see these angels and, you know, wake up from a daze and kind of like, whoa, there's angels singing. And do they kind of go, oh, am I just seeing things? What's the matter with me? You know, oh God, you know, you must have indigestion, go back to sleep. Or do they go, wow, something profound's happening here. They say go to Bethlehem, let's go. It's like, you know, are you open to a miracle? And, you know, and they were. So for me, that story is about, oh, these ordinary people, just like us, we're ordinary, can have hear something, see something, have some thought and go, oh, I could follow that. There might be something amazing to get out of this. Or we can go, yeah, that's never going to work. No, I must have been imagining. Who am I to think that I could see an angel and go back to sleep? And so, you know, that to me is just like, whoa, there's so much more in that story than I thought there was. I just thought it was about some shepherds. And
yeah, totally. And I love, you know, in the book, I love reading that because it does open up a whole different way of seeing. I know when something is so familiar with us, and I think, you know, no matter what, most of us are familiar with Christmas, and most of us are familiar with
the nativity. We've all been to our children's nursery play or somebody else, haven't we?
And you know, the whole the bare bones of the general story of Christmas. I'm sure, you know, there can't be many people on this planet who aren't reasonably familiar with it, you know, even if it's not their thing. And very, very often, yes, it can just become dull and boring and repetitive, and we don't actually stop. And I really see that, you know, with lots of memes, the way memes are bandied about and all of this, the kind of thing. There's really some deep and powerful things being shared, and it's just like, oh yeah, I know that. And I think this is the Christmas story. It's exactly the same. It's kind of, we are so familiar with it, we don't stop and look. It's, you know, the message of hope, the message that it contains is lost on us because we're just like, oh yeah, well, I know that, yeah. And yet your book, seeing it differently, even like it never occurred to me, and it sounds really stupid in one sense, but it never occurred to me to think of these shepherds as normal human beings like you and me. And, you know, what would you do? Like if I went, I don't know, sometimes in the evening when I'm locking up, if it's a nice evening, I go out into my garden or something and just and look at the sky. Now imagine if there was bright lights and angels and singing. What would I do? Would I think, my gosh, what have I been on today? What's happened? Or and actually just stopping and looking at it And I know I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, oh, I feel like some really woo-woo things have been happening to me lately. I feel like my mind and my heart are really opening in a way. And I said, I'm a little bit scared to share this. And he said, you've talked about the Bible, you've talked about people walking on water, turning water into wine. Yeah, these kinds of things. He said, and again, we don't stop and think about that, do we? We don't actually look at, we've read it and seen it so many times. And I just absolutely love how your writings and what you share in this book make me stop and see it differently.
And well, and they, you know, as I write it, I think they've made me see it differently again. You know, sometimes I think, whoa, in a few years' time, I could write this book again in entirely 25 entirely new chapters, you know, because then I might be seeing something completely different. But what you're saying about, you know, what would I do if I saw angels, or, you know, you talk about walking on water and stuff like that, is, you know, what occurs to me is that most people will just go, yeah, but of course none of that's real. None of it actually happened. There weren't really angels. Jesus didn't really turn water into wine. And I think, you know, the journey I've been on, I definitely, the beginning of, as I wrote this, I'm really pointing to the power of the metaphor in those things. Like, you know, that's a really key thing with this book. It's not for people that believe this stuff. It could be,
Yeah.
But if you don't, there's still power in that, because that is you know, the power of metaphor in all those stories is vast. So, for example, you know, there's one chapter where I talk about, you know, the actual birth of Jesus, this tiny, helpless baby. How is the world going to be changed? By silently, unexpectedly, in a dark and, you know, messy way that you don't expect, starting very, very small. That to me is a metaphor for how the world is going to change. That's the good news. That's what we need to be looking at. So whether Jesus was the Son of God or anything, that doesn't even matter. There's still power in that metaphor, in that story. But the interesting thing that I've noticed as I've kind of explored that, and I really feel like, oh, this is the wisdom of the Bible. This is the brilliance of how Jesus told his stories, because that's kind of, you know, was my beginning of my first book, is this parables and miracles and, you know, works of Jesus. But, you know, in this Advent story too, it's like the metaphor is all there. But the more I see the power in that metaphor, the more I start to find myself thinking, do you know, I think maybe that actually did happen. It's things that, you know, actually that could have happened. Actually, I can see how those healing stories where somebody just gets up and walks. That makes sense to me now in a way. That's not just a metaphor, I don't think, because I think when you're so aligned with your true self, your inner being, God, whatever you want to call that, which is clearly what Jesus was, he was totally in alignment, miracles happen. And so, you know, those things that looked like, oh yeah, there's power in this story because it's a metaphor, it's now, yeah, there is. And wow, what if there's even more? So, you know, it's just,
I love that the whole, the double-edged swordness of it all, the fact that whether you believe the actual story or whether you see it as metaphor, it's all, again, it's one of those things, what resonates with you, what makes sense to you. And it's not, there's I love that this is yes and, not either or. And I think one of the mistakes we make is either or. Like, so, you know, we can have a discussion and say, so is it a metaphor or did it actually happen? And I think when you get into that, you're actually missing the point. It's like, it makes no difference whether you see this as a metaphor and get something beautiful from the metaphor. Like you say, I love that, something tiny and small in a dark place. How is something like that going to change the world? And yet
power.
And yet how many times have we seen that happen? I know for me personally, I have seen my world completely changed in ways like that. And and then so whether you see both, whether you see one or the other or whatever. It is just, there is such power here in these stories. And I'm glad you brought up the whole miracle thing, because that, oh my gosh, I can't, I actually did put a piece of paper in and then I lost the piece of paper, but I just opened the book earlier on and I can't find it now. And I didn't think to look at the page number or anything, but it was just talking about miracles and talking about this whole idea that even now, you know, in our world at this moment, like I think this book has brought to me, it's made the characters that feel like they're no different to me, just because, you know, the story is based in an ancient time. You know, I've had 3 children, and when I read the bit about the birth of Jesus, I was thinking, oh my gosh, imagine being on a donkey when you're heavily pregnant. You know?
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I had never thought of that. You know, I had never, you just, oh yeah, she's on a donkey, she's going along, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's been a while since I was pregnant. My children are grown up, but just the thought of being on a donkey.
Yeah.
Heavily pregnant. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't, go on.
So, well, I was just going to say, so, you know, for people who haven't read the book, that's kind of what I've done in the book, is that I've taken bits of the story and kind of rewritten them. Yeah. So, you know, I've like written that story of Mary being on the donkey and what it was like. And, you know, can I just read a little bit? I've got that page open in front of me. So it's interesting, actually, this chapter, because the first chapter, the chapter just before it, is called Would You Agree to It? And I talked about Mary and Joseph so happily going off to Bethlehem when you know, just because God told them, and isn't that wonderful that they just believed and followed the nudge. And you know, so, and it was a nice chapter. It was about, there's a Hafiz poem about haggling with God. And I said, you know, I think most of us would haggle and go, well, that sounds ridiculous. You know, that nudge is stupid. I'm not doing it.
You're not noticed I'm pregnant.
Yeah. But, you know, but they didn't haggle with God. And then it was interesting because when I first wrote this book, I sent it out as emails, and I was sending it out to my list and each day in Advent last year. And somebody, one of my, Katie, one of my readers who was receiving these emails, wrote to me and sort of said, oh, that's lovely. But I wonder if they actually did haggle with God, because Mary wouldn't have thought that was a great idea, would she? And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. That's one of the things I love about this book, is that it was evolving with live in real time with feedback. Yeah. So she wrote to me and said, you know, I think they would have haggled. And I thought, yeah, there I am again, idealizing these people like they're something amazing. They're just ordinary people. Of course, they're going to go, what? Bethlehem? So I'm just going to read you a little bit. So then I rewrote it for the next chapter, which is called They Weren't Perfect Either. So the story starts like this. Mary burst into tears. The scorching desert sun burned the back of her hands where they clutched the worn leather reins. Her back ached, her sit bones were sore. The baby had been kicking since dawn, and she desperately needed to pee. 3 days they'd been on the road with only bread, figs, and that awful salty fish, getting smellier by the day in the searing heat. Water was in short supply, and her parched mouth and taut lips felt gritty with dust. Still, the road stretched out interminably in front of them, with nothing but the prospect of another uncomfortable night round the fire, with stones under her woven sleeping mat and the constant biting cold. The howling wolves frightened her at night, although the flames usually kept them well away. Around her now, streams of the other members of the House of David trudged past, wordless, exhausted. And then there's a little bit about the angel. She thought back to when the angel had come to her, and then she says, the whole idea just seemed crazy now. Why the hell are they sending us on this stupid journey, she said. Joseph felt a pang of despair. He didn't dare tell her what he'd heard passed back down the line from those who'd already arrived in Bethlehem. The small town was completely overwhelmed. It looked as if sleeping mats on the ground were all they could expect until they got back to Nazareth. He looked back at his frightened and dishevelled wife, and his anxieties matched her own. What if the baby came in the next few days? He slowed to be next to her and put his arm around her waist. We'll be okay, he said.
Oh my gosh.
I shouldn't be moved by my own writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still
Yes,
touches me.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's what it would have been like,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
That's the
Mm.
reality.
And I love that, because I don't know about you, but I see miracles and I get nudges and I get ideas, and then I get frightened. And
Yeah.
then I kind of think, who am I? Who am I to right here?
Yeah.
Who am
Well,
I?
then you get, what I see happening there is then you start going towards your miracle, following your nudge, and then it all seems to be going wrong. You're sitting
Yeah.
on a donkey, you've got nowhere to sleep, you're going to give birth in a stable. This is not it.
No.
Except it was. I think
Yeah.
that's what I see in that. It's so
Mm.
beautiful. It's like nobody would have planned it that way, except God probably did. But no human would go, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense. Lovely, nice long journey at 9 months pregnant. And yet it all it all was it all had a purpose. It was all okay, even the bits that weren't okay. And
Mm.
that's
I,
what I
I
love
saw
about it.
something really beautiful this morning in in the Ask and It Is Given group on Facebook. Dominic had written something about how it is always working out for us. And
Yes.
this is this is what
Yes.
I'm hearing in this. It's like, okay, but for the thinking, and as human beings we have thinking. I don't know about you, but I have thoughts, like you say, yeah, this is not how it should be. And yet underneath that, and I think that is the message here, there is a power, infinite intelligence. If we can trust in infinite intelligence and move into that space and allow what it is, things are always working out. Because you would never, like you say, if someone told you to get on a donkey and go for days and days when you're 9 months pregnant, that'd be a huge no for me. And yet the nudge and the way that this worked out, the way that this happened, and I can see whether that is a true thing, whether that is a metaphor or whatever. But I mean, it's a great metaphor again for this whole, the last thing on earth you would think to do actually turns out to be the best thing you could do.
Exactly.
And how many of us have had that experience?
Yes.
I don't know about you, but there are tons of things I can think about in my life that if I had been the one, this little me from the perspective I have here, if I'd have been the one orchestrating it, I wouldn't have done that. And yet when I look back now, it's those things that have made me who I am. It's those things that actually, the things that I absolutely would not change because of what they brought for me, what they gave me. So
yes. Yeah. And so I really hope that that's why there are reflections, that it's like, you read that and then you think, oh yeah, where has that happened to me? Where is that happening to me right now, that I'm arguing that I don't want to be doing it, or that I'm in the thick of it and it looks all like it's all going wrong, and what if it isn't? What if it's actually working out? It's that I hope that it sort of brings it back to a personal and sort of human level of we're just like these people. We're just in our own ways.
I think that's what I really saw, being familiar with a lot of Bible stories. They were just stories. And I guess as well, when you're like, the other thing, by the time we are reading these stories, whatever they are, the story is complete. And so it is, and you can really, like, if somebody said to you, do you know what, if you accept this thing, this amazing thing is then going to happen, it's a lot easier to, if it's okay, I know it's difficult, you're going to have to go on a journey when you're really, really pregnant, but let me tell you what's going to be the outcome of that.
Yes.
It's like, okay, all right then. But imagine, and that was the thing that I saw in this. It's like, and moment to moment when we are living our lives, we are being nudged. We are, I see miracles and I see nudges, but then some of these nudges, it's like, that I'm being nudged to do this, but I don't understand it and it doesn't make sense. And surely this other thing would be much more sensible to do. And when we're reading these completed stories, we're like, well, obviously you would do that, and obviously you would go there. But at the time, you know, when
Wasn't
that's
obvious.
yeah, it's not quite so obvious, is it?
Yeah.
It's not so necessarily always so easy to follow these nudges, but I think it is it's so beautiful to look for the miracles within this story, and then reflect on our own lives and see the amazing miracles that happen for, I don't know about you, but well, I do. I kind of know that they do because of conversations we've had. You know, there are so many miracles that just go on all the time around us. And some of them are tiny and some of them are humongous.
Yes. Yes. And that sense that I think I used that Einstein quote somewhere in the book, that there are two ways to live your life. One is as if everything is a miracle, and the
That
other
was what I was
is
talking
nothing
about.
is.
That's the one. And then something about a miracle. Yeah, that
Yeah. And I
read.
said, I just prefer to live that miracle-filled life, you know, because that's exactly what Sid talks about, isn't it? You're living in the world of your own thinking. That's all you can see. And do you see miracles, or do you just go, yeah, but that was just a coincidence? Yeah, well, of course that would happen. Yeah, well, I mean, I was just lucky. Do you do that, or do you go, wow, there's the universe is unfolding in my favor, even when I'm not recognizing it? And sometimes, but sometimes I recognize it.
Yeah.
Because what a beautiful, joyful way to live life, rather than just go, oh, I just got lucky today. And oh, well, but then that terrible thing happened, and that obviously is wrong. And, just so interesting. And I think the other thing, one of the other themes that kind of comes out in the story, the Advent story for me, is the one step at a time nature of Mary and Joseph's story, and that's partly what you've just been sort of getting at, that you don't know the ending. All you can do is just do the next thing that's kind of asked of you or expected, or that makes sense. You're gonna have a baby, okay, right? There we are, I'm pregnant now, okay, so I just gotta live my life. You've got to go to Bethlehem, okay, so off I go to Bethlehem. It's like, I don't know the next step, and then they thought they were going home. They didn't go home. They had to go off into Egypt, didn't they? That was unexpected. So they just off they went. And so it's like, one step at a time, life unfolds, but our tendency is to want to know the whole thing. Okay, so you say I'm going to give birth to the Son of God. So, like, how's that going to work out? And how am I going to educate him? And how am I going to make sure? And what point do I tell him he's the Son of God? And how do I, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I mean, who knows what the real conversations were that went on? But it's like, that's not the sense you get from the story. It's this flow of, okay, there's a nudge, there's a dream, there's a this, there's a that. And again, whether those things really happened like that or not, that to me speaks to how to live your life just one step at a time, without having to decide that it's going to be like this.
It's how we are actually living, but it's not the narrative that our head gives us.
That's so true. Of course we are. Yes.
And yet our head objects to that. Our mind, that internal dialogue objects. Like you say, it says,
that's
well,
the haggling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the haggling. It's like, well, no, I can't do that if I don't know what the outcome is.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I have heard people saying to me, well, if I knew that, I would be okay. And it's that whole, I'll be happy when, and if I could know, then I'll be okay. It's fine. I can go through this thing if I know what the outcome is going to be. And I remember, I think it was a group call that we were, a group call that we were on together, and you had this huge moment of really seeing that that's not how wisdom works. Like, I think when we think of wisdom, we think that wisdom, is going to give us the ending, but it doesn't. Wisdom gives us, it's like a sat nav. It's part of the sat nav, isn't it? It gives us that. It doesn't give you a therefore. It doesn't say, give birth to this baby, and then just give birth to the baby. It's just, it is absolutely just the next step. And that is actually, truthfully, how life unfolds for all of us. And but for the thinking that, all of that nonsense that we make up in our head, that it should be different, it needs to be different, it must be different, blah, blah, blah.
That the only way it'll be okay is if we know. As if it, because for me, I think one of the things that's made a big difference for me about that is realizing that what I think I know as possible is just a tiny little snapshot of what could be possible. So why would I just hang on to that? You know, I want this thing to happen because that's the best thing I can imagine. Yeah, but what about the 10 million things you can't imagine that are better than that? Would you rather have one of those? And actually, well, if they're better, why would I be afraid just to go, oh, I don't really mind which brilliant thing I get, or which thing I get, because I can, you know, because everything's working out for me, even the things that look like they're not working out for me. So it's okay, whatever it is. And that's just so liberating, isn't it? Because then you haven't got to keep driving at this one thing. No, but that's the thing. That's the only thing. It's like, no, when you really see it isn't. So many other ways that things can work out.
Yeah, and I think that is what sort of opened up in the book for me. It's like, yeah, there was one way of reading this and seeing this, and now there's a million ways of reading this and seeing this. And I think that is so true of so many things, because our personal mind just brings everything down to something so small. And yet, you know, what we have got in our corner, what we have got going for us is infinite mind. It's like, do we want to squeeze it all down and make it as small as we can do, or do we want to you know, synchronize our personal mind and the infinite mind and see what's on offer, what's available to us then? Because I know this is an ancient story and something you've done, but one of the things that I just love about this conversation, these conversations where they take, is how practical they are in everyday stuff. You know, when we can look to the stories and the metaphors and the message behind them and see, yeah, we can just allow life to unfold and follow the nudge and do the next thing and trust. We don't need to know absolutely everything. If we just know it's working out for us.
Yes. And I think one of the, you know, for me, the real clear metaphor for that and story within this book and story is the wise men. I feel like, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I said something in this book that I've never heard anybody say before, which was, one of those wise men weren't as wise as they thought they were. I've never heard anybody say that, but it just like hit me like a ton of bricks, that the wise men were not wise men, they were intellectual men. And they were these very learned men from the East. They knew a lot of stuff, but they were really in their heads. And, you know, in my version of the story, they're like looking at the map going, oh, we're going to head off on this journey. And one of them goes, you know, the name Bethlehem just keeps popping into my head. And the others go, well, that's ridiculous, because that's just some stupid little place in the middle of nowhere. No, we're going to Jerusalem. And all the time, what did they have? A guiding star. There's a guiding star going, showing them the way, but they're going, no, but we need to go to Jerusalem first. And so to me, the guiding star is the nudge of the universe, God guiding them. And they're like, yeah, we're not sure about that, but what we do know is Jerusalem is a kingy sort of place. So king of the Jews, we're off there. And, you know, I just think, they end up having this, you know, meeting Herod, who, as we all know, well, maybe we don't all know, but anyway, Herod basically wants to kill Jesus. He felt threatened by him. So that was a really bad idea, even to make known to Herod that Jesus was being born. And, you know, Herod then killed a whole load of babies to try and get rid of Jesus. Well, so had they not gone to Jerusalem, that probably would have been better. But their intellect said, oh, this is a good place to go. And then, so they ask Herod's kind of other wise men, who again consult their books and come up with, oh, Bethlehem. But what I noticed then is in the story, in the Bible, it says, and then the star went ahead of them all the way to Bethlehem and stopped over the place where Jesus lay. If you've got this star guiding you, why do you need to listen to these people who are basically just trying to stab you in the back anyway? So I just think it's this lovely metaphor for, we just really want to know the answer. We want to have it proved in a book. We want it written down 100 years ago that this is the place to go. Whereas, you know, there's a star, there's a nudge, you're going to find your way there. you don't need to start, hobnobbing with evil kings or what in our life. You don't need the answers that might look like the right ones. If you feel something makes sense in your own heart.
What's coming to me, for like when you said what's coming to me about my life now in that sense is, I know I've always been a people pleaser. So it's like, yeah, what I have always thought I need is other people's approval. If I think something, well, what do you think?
Yeah, is it really a good idea?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea?
Yeah, not actually listening to that star within myself. And it's kind of like, if there is, and if there is something, if there is a nudge there, it's like, not just, I know for me, it took me a long time to learn to trust that and to trust myself, because other people think differently. Other people have different ideas. And what I'm really seeing now, again, this comes back to that whole point that you made that looks to me so precious. It's like, yes, other people do think differently. Other people do, their star is guiding them somewhere else. They do see this differently to you, but that's okay. Yeah. And so not having to, like, the people pleaser in me absolutely kicked and screamed at this whole, because I need your approval. I need you to say, yes, I'm headed in the right direction. And it's the same thing, isn't it? It's a beautiful metaphor with
they can't see it because they're not looking at your star. So if you say, is this a good idea? They might well say, oh no, that looks like a terrible idea, because that's Sid's whole separate realities thing, isn't it? They're looking at something completely different. They don't know your life. They don't know your internal nudges. They don't know your hopes and dreams. Even if you try and tell them, they don't know your life and your experience and your spiritual journey and any of that. No. And so why would you ask them? And yet we do it all the time, don't we? Me too. Yeah. It's like, oh, but do you approve? It's like, if they approve, why does that help? And if they don't approve, why is that a problem? It's that, I think that's really interesting point, and me too. I see myself doing that, the sort of, oh, this seems, but do you think it's okay?
Yeah.
Like, just that realizing more and more, oh, they're looking at a different star, and they think that I'm looking at their star, and I think they're looking at my star. So this is very confusing. Whereas when you just go, no, we're all following different stars to different places, and we can do the journey together nonetheless.
Absolutely. It's beautiful to do it together. But I think it is, that there's something really coming up in me at the moment about that, to kind of be absolutely just, I mean, our business, Dare to Be You, and it keeps coming back again. It is absolutely, we all have our own journey. We all have our own, exactly what we all have, our own guiding star and our own journey taking us to, where it is we're going, and learning to trust that. And it's really, you've done it so well in this story. It's made it so real, because it has brought it down to this. We don't, when we get these nudges, it is, I want other people to approve, and then I want to argue about the nudge and think that I know better about the nudge that I'm going to do, for my life or my business or whatever it is. And it is like, actually, the more that we can just see that it is infinite wisdom that is guiding us, and if we could just align with that and follow that, and in the times when I do, amazing things happen. the times when I argue and don't, it looks like eventually amazing things happen. I go on an awful long journey to get that amazing thing to happen, because I go around the houses and look for approval and do all of this before I get there. So,
well, a whole lifetime, I can look at my whole life and go, I can see where I've just been veering here, like, whereas I could have been doing something different, and but that's okay too. I don't feel any regret about that, but it's just so fascinating to see how we're, the more we learn, the more we understand ourselves, the more we're in the flow of life, the easier it gets, really. Just we flow with it rather than paddling frantically upstream against it.
So if people want a copy of your book, where can they get a copy of your book?
They can get it on Amazon, because I published it through Amazon, so it's available there as a paperback or as a Kindle download. So yeah, I'd love people to go and read it and let me know what resonates with you, what you think of it. And if people know anybody who in a church group or a spiritual group of some kind, or I think lots of people have said to me it's a very comforting book. So somebody who's kind of feeling a bit lonely this Christmas, I think it would be a lovely gift for them. I actually think it would be a wonderful book for people like hospice chaplains and hospital chaplains and people like that, or school chaplains, people who are kind of want to talk about religion, but to people, or about Christmas or about faith, to people who don't have a faith, who don't believe that stuff, because I just feel it's that seeing that something beautiful without having to believe it. So I've also got some lovely postcards, which I'm very pleased with a QR code on the back. So, you know, if anyone's watching and knows somebody that you think would be interested in the book and you'd like me to send them a postcard, I'm very happy to do that. Just get in touch with me.
And where can they get? I mean, I will put all the information below this, but where can they get in touch with you?
Well, my email is lizzie@lizziepaish.com. So yeah, just drop me an email, or you can go to my website and contact me there. And you know, if people have read the book and want to chat about it, you know, I'd really love to hear from you. And I'm probably going to do, well, I'm going to do in Advent a WhatsApp book group, which is something someone suggested to me. Never done it before.
Sounds amazing.
Sounds like a great idea. So, you know, just a WhatsApp group where day by day, because what we haven't said is, you know, this book is designed with 25 chapters to read every day of December, basically running up to Christmas, which doesn't quite coincide with church Advent, which I think this year starts on the 20 something of November, which is, anyway, we can work it out. There's 25 little chapters to read. So as we go through, you know, it'd be really nice, we're a whole group of us all reading the same bit on the same day, to just reflect on it and comment and say what struck you. And yeah, so if you'd like to join a WhatsApp group, then just drop me your phone number. I'll add you to my WhatsApp. I
love a book group. It's
and then probably, you know, if people are interested, we can get together for a Zoom call at some point, you know, sort of halfway through December or something like that. So yeah, I just really, it's funny, you know, I think probably most people say when you write a book, you're really writing it for yourself. You know, I'm not writing this book because I think it's going to become a Sunday Times #1 and make me a millionaire. But I really do.
Remember who your friends are if it does.
Remember who's looking for doing a building project.
Exactly that.
But I do really have a real heart for this book, that it's got something, it says something really accessible. You know, I just think there are so many people, aren't there, who have been, I've spoken to lots of people who were brought up as, you know, in a church of some kind, and at some point, just like I said, they didn't believe what they kind of were trying to believe, and they've kind of had to leave it behind. But you know, the beauty of all those stories I've grown up with is really precious to me, and I feel so blessed to have found new power and wisdom in them. And I think there are a lot of people like that, who kind of, you know, we love that Christmas story, but don't, you know, just kind of an old story, like you said. So to, you know, to have it brought to life. And, you know, one of my friends wrote this lovely review on Amazon. He put, I thought this book was going to be really Christian, but it's much deeper than that. I thought it was really nice. And then he said, every time I read it, every time I put it down, I feel a lovely sense of peace.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that is exactly why I wrote this book. You don't have to be a Christian to read it. It doesn't, you know, I have no agenda in that department at all. I don't even know whether I'd call myself a Christian. But there's gold in that story. There's gold, you know, there's this spiritual something that I want to share, and this is my way of doing it. So
you've done it beautifully.
Feel a real love for it.
I must say you have done it absolutely.
Thank you.
beautifully. So
thank you. So
thank
lovely
you.
to
Thank
hear
you.
your
I've loved our
pleasure in it too.
conversation, as I always do. So thank you
Me
very,
too.
very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me see. I'm all of a dither because I've just completely got into the conversation there, and there we go.